Today's topic today's topic is about chain of responsibility pattern. It is one of the part of the behavioral design patterns. Coming to the introduction to design patterns, we have definition of design patterns and importance of behavioral design patterns. First, I'm going to explain about the definition of design patterns. Design patterns are reusable solutions to common problems that occur in software design. Design patterns aren't blueprints or templates, but rather guidelines for solving particular problems in a flexible and efficient way. Importance of behavioral design. Importance of behavioral design are a crucial aspect of design patterns that especially addresses the interaction and communication between objects in a software system. While creational patterns deal with object creation, mechanisms, and structural patterns focus on the composition of classes or objects, behavioral patterns concentrate on the delegation of responsibilities and communication between objects. I have written some more points on my notepad. Those introduced as reusability, best practices, development speed, and etc. First, I'll go with this reusability. Design patterns offer reusable solutions to common design problems. Instead of reinventing the wheel for each new software project, developers can apply established design patterns to address specific issues. Coming to the best practices, design patterns encapsulate best practices and proven solutions that have been refined over time by the software development community. Following these patterns helps developers avoid common pitfalls and produce more robust and maintainable code. Coming to flexibility, design patterns are not rigid templates, rather, they are flexible guidelines. They can be adapted and modified to fit the unique requirements of a particular object. Proven solutions for the design patterns. Proven solutions for the design patterns are derived from real world scenarios and have been tested and refined over time. By incorporating these patterns into software design, developers can leverage the collective wisdom of the software development community, reducing the risk of common errors and enhancing the reliability of their systems. Next, coming to the overview of the behavioral design patterns. This is the single line comment I am going to tell you about this. Behavioral design patterns concentrate on defining how objects interact and communicate within a software system. They provide solutions for organizing and coordinating object behavior, enhancing the system's adaptability and maintainability. When I, with the brief explanation about this is spe- specifying how components interact and communicate with one another inside a software system is the primary goal of behavioral design patterns. These patterns helps to organize the behavior of the system by providing suggestions for effective communication between different components. The delegation of the responsibility among objects in the main emphasis of behavioral patterns. In order to support flexibility, maintainability, and reusability in the code, tasks and functionalities must be distributed in a certain way. Next, the overview of a behavioral design patterns. Overview of a behavioral design patterns. Object behavior can be arranged and coordinated using behavioral design patterns, which improves the adaptability and maintainability of software system. These patterns aid in the flexibility and comprehensibility of designs, making it simpler to add, alter, or swap out components without jeopardizing the system's functionality as a whole. And this, the next thing is explanation of the chain of responsibility. In this PPT, it describes briefly of the chain of responsibility pattern. The chain of responsibility pattern is a behavioral design pattern that facilitates the passing of requests along a chain of handlers. Each handler in the chain decides either to process the request or delegate it to the next handler, creating a flexible and decoupled way to handle various requests. Purpose of the chain of responsibility pattern in behavioral design pattern is The primary purpose is to establish an efficient and scalable mechanism for handling requests by allowing multiple objects to participate in the process. This promotes a chain of handlers where each one has autonomy that the process or forward requests based on its specific responsibilities, contributing to a more modular and extensible design. To add some more points, the in for the chain of responsibility pattern purpose, those are efficient and scalable mechanism, multiple object participation. When it comes to efficient and scalable mechanism, the primary purpose is to establish a efficient and scalable mechanism for handling requests. The chain structure allows for a streamlined flow of requests through multiple handlers. Chain of handlers. The pattern establishes a chain of handlers forming a structured sequence for processing requests. Each handler is a link in the chain. And the last is specific responsibilities. Specific responsibilities that handlers have specific responsibilities based on their role in the chain. Responsibilities dictate whether a handler processes a request or delegates it. The next comes to intent. The intent of the chain of responsibility. Chain of responsibility intent is aims to decouple the sender of a request from its receivers, forming a chain of objects. The primary objective is to allow multiple objects to handle the request. Each handler in the chain has the authority to either process a request or pass it along to next handler. This pattern accentuates the collaborative handling of requests by multiple objects in the seamless and extensible manner. To add some more points for this intent, I have my notes to this. Yes, flexibility and dynamic handling. This flexibility and dynamic handling, give me a moment. Flexibility and dynamic handling, which handles flexibility and dynamic handles. I have some issues with this thing. Flexibility. Here is the UML diagram, which says which has the handler and concrete handler 1, concrete to concrete handler n, and we have the client here. The purpose of this UML diagram example is client request comes to the abstract handler and it decides that which of the sub handlers will actually fulfill the request. If request is not completed by first assigned subhandler, then it returns it to the base handler and it decides which of the subhandler is now feasible for task. Participants and responsibilities for the above UML diagram. Handler and the role of this handler is defines an interface for handling requests and optionally implements the successor link. Responsibilities are declares a method to handle request, optionally provides a reference to the next handler in the chain. Concrete handler. The role of this concrete handler is implements the handler interface and the responsibilities are handles request it is responsible for, optionally passes request to the next handler in the chain if unable to handle. And the client. The role of the client, it initiates the request and sets the beginning of the chain. Responsibilities of for this client sends request to the first handler in the chain. Understanding these roles and their associated responsibilities is crucial for implementing the chain of responsibility pattern effectively. The client initiates the process by sending requests through the chain. Each concurrent handler can handle a specific type of request or delegate it further, contributing to the pattern's flexibility. Now comes how it works. Request flow in the chain of responsibility pattern. We have five of it. Request initiation by client, handler receive request, decision making process, passing along the chain, end of the chain. Request initiation by client. The client initiates a request and sends it to the first handler chain. And the end of the chain is the chain continues until a handler successfully processes the request or until it reaches the end of the chain with no suitable handler. This is my part, and now I'm passing the mic to my friend Anusha to continue.
So I will be explaining about, I will be giving more detailed explanation about this chain responsibility pattern. So how it works, the request of flow, I would like to add some of the points to it. So the dynamic flow of request through the chain of handlers demonstrate the patterns of flexibility and the decision making autonomy of each handler. It ensures that each handler in the chain contributes to the process of request based on its specific responsibilities. So here is the real world scenario, which is handling purchase approval. So the problem is in an corporate purchasing system, various departments require different approvals level of purchasing. So traditionally the approval process is hard coded, leading to inflexible and difficulty in accommodating changes. So the solution for this, by using the chain of responsibility, we use there's three flow charts. So the first is handler, which is each department is handled in the chain, which is finance, IT, or operations. And the second is client. uh, the purchase request initiates from a department and enters the chain. The third is request flow, which request flow through the chain starts with the financial handlers. So if IT can't approve it, it passes to the request to the operation handler. So here's the code for the chain responsibilities pattern. So I have my own information about it. So so this is the example where we use the concrete handler 1 and concrete handler 2, and which are handlers that can be send requests to the handle based on the criteria. The client setups the chain by linking handler 1 and handler 2. When a request sent through the chain using handler 1, it will be propagated through the handler until one of them can handle the request or until the end of the chain is reached. So this code here, it defines that handler interface, which declares the method handle request that concrete. Normally we divide this code into three parts, though So this is the first part, which is handler interface. So this defines the handler interface defines which declares the method handle request to concrete handlers will implement. This method is responsible for processing or passing the request to the next handler in the chain. So this is the concrete handler 2. This is the second part before the client. So it declares the class is a concrete implementation of handler interface. It checks whether it can handle the request or not. If it can, it processes the request. Otherwise, it passes the request to the next handler in the chain. So, and also, the second handler is another concrete implementation of the handler interface with its own logical of handling or passing the request. Similarly, for the third, which is client. In this client class, we create instant of concrete handler 1 and handler 2 and set up the chain by linking them. We then send requests through the chain using the handler request method of the first handler 1. The output demonstrate how the chain process or passes the request based on the logic defined in the each number. So these are the benefits of the chain responsibility pattern. So I would like to add some of the other advantages for this. So the decoupling or of the sender and receiver, this is the first advantage. The pattern decouples the sender of the request from its receiver. Sender don't need to know which object will handle the request, promoting flexibility in the system. The second one is the dynamic handling, the chain which allows for dynamic handling of request. You can also easily add or remove or reorganize the handler in the chain without modifying the sender, providing a high degree of flexibility. The third is promote single responsibility principle. Each handler in this chain has a specific responsibility. This promotes a modular or maintainable design. And the fourth is reduced coupling. Handlers only know about their immediate successor, reducing the coupling between components. This isolate makes it easier to modify or replace individual handlers without affecting the reset of the system. And these are the other benefits, which are flexible, easy of adding new handlers, scalable, modularity. So these are the limitations and considerations of this pattern. So complexity with dynamic chain. Second is understanding chain order, limited context information, and difficulty in testing. So I would like to add some of the more points to it. So guarantee of handling. So there is no guarantee that the request will be handled. If the end of the chain is reached without handling the request, it might remain unprocessed. So the second is single responsibility principle. Handlers may become too broad, vaulting the single responsibility principle. It essentially to ensure that each handler has a specific responsibility. The third is dynamic change. Modifying the chain dynamically at runtime can be challenging. Adding or removing handlers on the fly might require carefully consideration to avoid disruptive the flow. So these are the limitations. These are the use cases for this pattern. So which are command pattern, observe pattern, state pattern. These are included in the behavioral pattern. So these are similar to this chain pattern. So I would like to add some of the other points to it. So event handling system, which deals with the event in the system, the chain of responsibility can be used to process or filter events through a series of handlers. So the second is logger system. Logging system can use the chain of responsibility to handle log messages with different severities levels. So the third one is a workflow system. In the system where a series of process steps or tasks need to be performed.